Number 10, Nicky Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the Minister responsible for the Earthquake Commission. What progress has been made in the repair of homes in Canterbury by the EQR Repair Programme?
The Honourable Gerry Brownlee.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to report to the House that 30,748 homes have been completed under the EQC Home Repair Programme. This total expenditure, the total expenditure on this project now exceeds $1 billion. These are homes that have damage costing more than $15,000 but less than the $100,000 cap. In addition, more than 47,000 emergency repairs have been completed and 18,000 heating units have been installed. There are approximately 84,000 of the 180,000 houses in Christchurch in this program, which means now about 1/3 of those repairs has been completed.
Nicky Wagner.
To the Minister responsible for Earthquake Commission, how many houses does he expect to be repaired in 2013?
The Honourable Gerry Brownlee.
Mr. Speaker, the program is now repairing in excess of 2,000 houses each month, and they would hope to have completed over half the required repairs by the end of this year. As building standards and foundation designs have become clearer with the ground settling, work will increase on repairs exceeding $50,000. These projects will take a little longer, but EQR should complete in excess of 50,000 repairs by the end of this year.
The Honourable Leanne Dalzell.
Speaker, to the Minister, does he stand by the EQR repair strategy for damaged homes with asbestos in light of the Medical Officer of Health describing it as a future landmine, and if so, why?
The Honourable Gerry Brownlee.
Mr. Speaker, I have to very clearly say I think the Medical Officer of Health may have been misled to the extent of the problem when he made his statements.
Question number 11, Chris Hipkins. Point of order, Chris Hipkins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to raise a point of order with you under Speaker's ruling 151/5 relating to the transfer of this question. I'll let you look that one up, but while you do that, this question was originally set down to the Minister of Education, and in setting it down to the Minister of Education, we needed to provide some authentication for the question, for the issue of raising strained relations in the primary question. And the authentication that we provided made it very clear that the strained relations being referred to were between the Minister of Education and the Secretary of Education. And so the wording was negotiated with the Office of the Clerk once we presented that authentication to them to make it clear where we were going with the question. Speaker's ruling 151/5 prevents the transfer of a question where only one minister, or the minister that the question had originally been put to, could be expected to have the knowledge in order to answer the question and the issues around that. A breakdown in a relationship between a minister and a chief executive is really something that only the minister whose relationship has broken down can be expected to answer for. And therefore the transfer of this question to the Minister of State Services seems to be an abuse of the transfer process, in that it is allowing a minister to escape answering for their own actions and the breakdown of the relationship with their own chief executive.
I'll hear the Honourable Leader of the House.
I think the first point, Mr. Speaker, is that the opposition have relied in getting this question on the sheet on statements that were not made by the minister but by the other party. Therefore, they are of an allegatory nature. But it is a well-known and established precedent that the employment relationship between a chief executive is with the State Services Commissioner. It is therefore appropriate that the State Services Minister is the one who would answer in matters of such a breakdown. Otherwise, you could have chief executives making all sorts of allegations about ministers, and then the opposition assuming that that gave them carte blanche to ask those ministers any questions they like.
Order. It's an interesting point the member makes. I mean, as a fundamental principle, the questions can be transferred, and the member's quite correct, except where that would be objectionable insofar as the minister it's being transferred away from is the only person who could possibly have the information. It's interesting, though, to look, the member in raising his point of order referred to the material provided to validate the question. he will recollect from that material that the view that there had been strained relations was a view of the State Services Commissioner, and therefore one can't necessarily automatically assume it's the view also of the Minister. And it's the state, because the view, the view that was the validation contained the view of the State Services Commissioner. Because I'd look at this, because I suspected when it was transferred the point may be raised. And given that the view the member is referring to is the view of the State Services Commissioner, in addition to the point raised by the Honourable Leader of the House that the State Services Commissioner is responsible for these matters, it seems not unreasonable that the question could be transferred to the Minister responsible, the Minister for State Services. Point of order, Chris Hipkins.
And I won't go on further on the subject. I do want to just raise one last point on this matter, and that if the Minister disagreed with the view put forward by the State Services Commissioner, the only person really that can answer that is the Minister of Education, not the Minister of State Services. So you've actually just reinforced the point that I was trying to make.
Order. No. I don't think I need any further. I don't think I need any further assistance. Well, order. I'll hear from the Leader of the House. Indeed.
I know.
Order. Hey, order. Order. I'll hear from the Leader of the House, the Honourable Gerry Brownlee.
If you were to accept Mr Hipkins' point, Mr Speaker, you would deny the opportunity that Mr Hipkins has to ask that direct question.
Well, look at. I'll hear briefly from the Right Honourable Winston.
Mr Speaker, we could solve this problem. We could solve this problem because the expert on this question is here, and I seek leave for the Minister of Education to answer the question.
The member cannot seek leave for another person to answer a question. Look, this matter is easily dealt with. I've allowed the House time to explore it. The government had an absolute right to transfer this question, and the member should proceed with his question. Point of order, the Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Mr Speaker, my understanding is that the House is actually the master of its own decisions, and by leave can essentially do anything. The Right Honourable Winston Peters sought the leave for a question to be transferred back again. My view is, sir, you've got to put that to the House.
I think the matter can probably be easily dealt with. I'll check up to make sure that, and it seems to me the member makes a reasonable point that the House is the master of its own destiny. So I'm happy to put the leave. Leave is sought for point of order to the Honourable Leader of the House.
If that's the way you go, then I would suggest that we go through Speaker's rulings one by one, seeing if the House wishes to reconfirm them, because that's where we're getting to.
No, order. Order. I think on this issue that it's. Oh, that's not very helpful. I say the Right Honourable Gentleman. The leave is easily denied, and I mean I will check further to check on the specific issue around questions. Certainly, a member cannot. There are some limits around what can be covered by leave, but I'm not aware of any reason why this should be limited. The point that's been made to me by the clerk is a very good point, that if the leave had been sought for the question to be transferred to another minister, that would be the more appropriate way for the leave to be put to the House, because I am concerned about leave being sought for specific questions to be answered by one or another person. So if the leave's rephrased, I'm happy to put it. The Right Honourable Winston Peters. Just point of order, the Honourable.
Does that mean that the House determines now which minister answers questions as opposed to the government?
No. The government determines which minister should answer a question, but there's no reason why, just as a member can seek leave to have their question deferred, there's no reason why leave couldn't be sought for a question to be transferred to another minister, because it's very much in the hands of any member to deny it. It's not as if it's putting the House at any risk at all. It would be, I think, it would be extremely inappropriate were leave to be regularly sought. This is an issue where a question was transferred that has caused some concern. I believe the transfer of the question was absolutely legitimate on the evidence I've seen, and there's no reason for it not to have been transferred. However, leave is now sought for it to be transferred back, and I'm prepared to entertain putting that leave. Right on, Winston Peters.
Speaker, I seek leave for question number 11, the name of recipients, to be transferred to another minister, or more specifically, back to the Minister of Education.
Leave is sought for that course of action. Is there any objection? There is objection. Point of order. That matter is now dealt with. The Honourable Leader of the House.
Mr Speaker, I'd call your attention to Standing Order 1513 and ask you to give us a fairly prompt ruling as to whether or not that Speaker's ruling stands, because it says in the Speaker's rulings it is not for the Speaker or the House to determine which minister has responsibility for a question. Seems to me that in that circumstance, either that has been dispensed with or the House has just committed itself to a leave process that is contrary to the spirit of that Speaker's ruling.
The Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Mr Speaker, it is quite clear that it is in the power of the House to move away from a particular Speaker's ruling if it so chooses unanimously.
I think we don't need to spend more on this issue today. I mean, the fundamental rule remains that it is the government's responsibility to determine which minister answers a question. There was concern was raised over the transferal of this question. I have ruled that it was perfectly in order for the question to be transferred, and then leave has been sought for the question to be transferred back. Now, the House is the master of its own destiny, and that seeking such leave is never going to work. It's hard to conceive how it would ever work, because the government does have control over that, and that's why were it to become a regular practice, I think the matter would need to be dealt with more clearly. But there is no reason. I've got no problem with the procedures followed today, and so I think the question now should be put to the Minister. Question number 11 should now be put to the Minister of State Services, Chris Hipkins.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Minister of State Services. What were the factors that contributed to the strain